Coming up next on Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable, we'll talk about the latest on efforts to expand the state's Medicaid program. Attorney General Tom Horne says he's ready to sue the city of Bisbee over its civil unions ordinance, and the Arizona Department of Veterans Services director is asking the governor for his job back. Those stories and more next on the Journalists Roundtable.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ted Simons. Joining me tonight are Mary Jo Pitzel of the Arizona Republic, Howard Fisher of Capital Media Services, and Ben Giles from the Arizona Capital Times. Medicaid expansion remains a major topic at the Capitol, and Mary Jo, now we have some counties getting in on all this. What's going on?
Well, this is just part of that continuing campaign for the governor and her supporters to get the legislature to vote for Medicaid expansion. Every week there's some kind of new level of support that rolls out, and this week it's a couple of counties in northern Arizona. Interestingly, a lot of those counties encompass the district where House Speaker Andy Tobin, which he represents, and Tobin's going to be a key player in this because eventually he'll probably have to bring that thing up for a vote.
And these are all city councils with majority, if not completely Republican, and county board of supervisors, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. And the real key is going to be, I think Andy Tobin could be talked into this, but he's in a position where he says, look, I've got 36 Republicans. I'm not prepared to bring this thing to the floor with 24 Democrats and 7 Republicans. He says, I need to be able to give my caucus something. Now, some of that can come from external forces like the Board of Supervisors. But they want tiny changes. They want some guarantees that the circuit breaker will work, that we will step away. There's also this new issue that's come up about abortion and whether we should put in a provision that says you can't fund family planning because the family planning money goes to Planned Parenthood and they might use it to fund abortions. And so there's a lot of little changes that Andy wants to make it acceptable to his caucus.
Oh, and don't forget about the little fight that's going to inevitably crop up about whether the assessment that the governor wants to levy on the hospitals is a tax and therefore requiring a two-thirds vote. A much harder hill to climb for the governor getting that out of the legislature. And that battle will come. We just don't know when.
Back to the external forces. How much of a difference does it make to have these Republican, I mean, the ranking, we know what's happening with Republican Party headquarters and precincts and these sorts of things, but boards of supervisors, impact there?
I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have. I feel like the Tobins and the Biggs of the world, they've got to really work within their own caucus, and they've got to feel it out that way, because Biggs has said, actually just this week for the first time, that more specifically he's willing to bring it to the floor, but he's always reiterated that he wants a majority of his caucus to be comfortable with it. Now, maybe a little bit of outside influence will be able to help members of his caucus slowly creep towards the governor's side, but if he's to be believed, things haven't changed much since when the session started.
And what the supervisors may do is buy political cover for lawmakers who could go either way. In other words, if you have a Don Shooter, if you will, and the UMass supervisor saying, okay, we need this, Don can come back and say, well, we need this. We're funding, mental health care right now out of the county budget that we could essentially help have the state pay for, have the federal government pay for, and then provide other services.
A lot of this is, at this point, trying to provide cover for Republican lawmakers who are hesitant for whatever reason about voting for Medicaid. Maybe they like the idea, but they're a little nervous about how that, or very nervous about how that will play out at the polls. Or maybe they don't like the idea, but they're going to be convinced to vote for expansion. But you get cover in all kinds of ways, by getting local officials, the grassroots to say that they support you, by getting a lot of Republicans so you all jump off that cliff together.
Well, the other cover that's really needed, it's been interesting, the business community, we've all seen the chambers, the hospitals have been out there saying, well, we support you. What the business community hasn't quite said yet, and I think what some of these people are waiting for, is if I get a primary challenge, are you going to provide me with $30,000 that I need? And that might be exactly what's needed. Now, nobody's going to make that promise, at least in, in front of us. But that's really what these folks are scared of. They have watched the Tea Party folks within their own districts start to take over and do these kind of challenges and bump off incumbents.
It's interesting to watch the campaign here because we heard the governor making this a pro-life. I'm a pro-life governor. This is pro-life. And now we're hearing, I think it's Yavapai County attorney Sheila Polk saying this is a law and order issue because there are so many folks with mental illnesses in the criminal justice system. We need some help.
Well, it's many arguments, whatever argument you can bring to the table to help sell it.
Yeah.
And, I think she's got a point. I mean, we've seen, some of the most egregious shootings that we've seen in this country, have been traced back to people who have mental health issues. If they can get access to care, maybe maybe this Tucson shooting wouldn't have happened. Maybe the Colorado shooting wouldn't have happened at the movie theater.
And there's a lot of money coming in. You remember, the state's cost, which is $240 million, is going to be paid for by this assessment, we'll use that term loosely, on hospitals, and it's going to bring in $1.6 billion. It's going to bring 300,000 people into the program. That's very powerful for people like Sheila Polk, who say people are falling through the cracks.
Real quickly, Ben, when you mentioned that the Senate President said he'd be willing to get this, or willing to get this out there, I guess, to a vote. Now, that's a standalone vote, correct? That means he sees this as not necessarily needing 2/3 through the budget, the whole 9 yards?
He hasn't said that yet. Not in the slightest, no. I think he still sees it as needing a 2/3 majority vote, and I think he'll be on the front lines of that fight to try and make sure that it needs 20 instead of 16 in the Senate to get through. And of course, him saying I'll allow a vote doesn't mean that he wants to see it get out of his chamber.
Yes.
It's just a recognition that this is the biggest priority for the governor. And for a lot of ways, it's the biggest issue the Republican Party is going to face this year. So he can't just avoid it, and politically it wouldn't be a good maneuver for him as president to try and squash this.
Yeah. Well, here's the other, the math works out that way either way. If you need 9 Republicans to get it out of caucus, and assuming that the majority of the 13 Democrats will go along, you've got your 2/3. Same thing in the House. So if, in fact, the rules of Andy Tobin and Andy Biggs are, I want half my caucus, you'll have your 2/3, and this will be avoided as a discussion.
You mentioned assuming the Democrats go along. Is there any indication the Democrats are going to start playing a little football here?
Well, they've said from the beginning, we're for Medicaid expansion. We ran on this. We believe in this. We're not going to play games with it. But now you're starting to hear in the last month or so these little footnotes. Well, except, we're not going to give away the store. We're not going to vote for Medicaid expansion at the cost of steep tax cuts, or tax cuts, or, deep reductions to education, or doing some kind of program that they don't approve of. So there are some caveats on there, but for the most part, it's assumed, and I think still safely assumed, that the Democrats are going to be a vote for Medicaid expansion.
And in fact, the way the governor structured this, the money that's coming in, actually the assessment on hospitals not only pays for the match, but actually brings in some additional money that helps pay for other costs, which supposedly frees up money. And the Democrats are looking at that as the opportunity to say, okay, now we've got money.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on now to Bisbee, Arizona, which is a wonderful little town, very bucolic, beautiful, hilly. I don't know about bucolic, but hilly, and
it's
a lot of rocks
town,
and yet they vote for civil unions for gay couples. Now, talk to us about this. This is just within the city boundaries?
Right. The ordinance, which was approved on a 5-2 vote earlier this week by the Bisbee Council, says we will recognize civil unions within the limits of city authority and within city boundaries. I don't know what Bisbee's geographic spread is, how we might know he lived there a long time ago.
Warren, no, but Bisbee, yes, correct?
Bisbee, yes. Well,
yes.
Actually, it's sort of funny that community has always been split into 3 different factions down there. The issue comes up because several Arizona cities, including Phoenix, have what they call domestic partner registries. In other words, in Phoenix, you can register as a domestic partner and you will get hospital visitation, for example, that's due to spouses. What sort of drove this as an issue is Bisbee said, and we're going to say that inheritance laws apply as if you were married, and certain probate laws apply as if you were married. Now, look, the fact is Bisbee doesn't have the authority to tell the Cochise County Superior Court judge how to apply probate laws. It's a nullity. It's a nice thing. But Tom Horn saw an opportunity to say, look at me, I'm here defending the family, so he wants a declaratory judgment of some sort to have the law declared invalid even before anybody tries to enforce it.
And I think he said that 3 Southern Arizona lawmakers came to him and said, do something about this. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. The 3 lawmakers who represent the area, who are conservative Republicans, said, you've got to stop this. But again...
And they said that they're doing that because they heard from their constituents,
yes.
Presumably in Bisbee.
Well, I'm not sure that their Bisbee constituents said that, but that's fine. But
how wise is this for Horn to take on?
Well, anything that diverts attention from having bumped into an expensive car is probably a good deal. I don't know that this is a brilliant thing for him to take on. The fact is that, first of all, I don't even know that a judge will take this. Generally, courts like a real controversy. In other words, somebody goes in, I'm a domestic partner, I should be entitled to this benefit, the will, the probate. Then the court has a real case. Can we apply the law? He's asking on a purely academic level a judge to decide that this law is unenforceable. So he's setting himself up for the court to reject him, which, again, he doesn't need more bad publicity right now.
That's why I asked the question, because I was kind of curious about that. Was it wise for the governor's office to get involved with this situation with the veterans? What is going on? Veterans Services Director resigns, next day says, I want my job back, I was forced out. Governor's office says,
no way.
No.
Well, I mean, yes, it's her agency. She's the chief executive of the state, and the directors of state agencies serve at the pleasure of the governor. What happened here is that Joey Strickland, the director of the Veterans Department, hired a former state lawmaker, Terry Proud, a former female lawmaker from Tucson, and Proud has a penchant for sometimes putting her foot in her mouth, and she did that in a big way with a public. With an interview in which she said that she doesn't believe women should serve on the front lines because they have menstrual cycles, and so that took off. And Proud quickly denied it. But the governors that caught the governor's office's ear. They said, "Well, wait a minute. We told Mr. Strickland a year ago not to hire her because she was going to quit as a lawmaker to take a job with the agency. You can't do that. I mean, you can't do that." So Strickland apparently interpreted that to mean, "Oh, well, then I can't hire her while she's a lawmaker." But she's been out of office since mid-January, and he hired her. And when they got word of that, and especially after her comment about women on the front lines, they said, "We're done. Both of them out of there."
What is the reaction to this among lawmakers, among folks at the Capitol? Does it sound like the governor's office might be tone deaf considering the action, or do they understand what she and her? I'm guessing it's her. Might be someone at her office making this decision. But what are you hearing?
I think they understand that this is the governor's employee, and whether there was a miscommunication or not, at least in her mind, Joey Strickland disobeyed an order from his boss, the governor. And maybe coming out into the media and asking for his job back the way he did isn't also the best way to lobby the governor to get that job back. I don't think that's going to please Jen Brewer very much. No more than it did that he hired a former lawmaker that, for whatever reason, and her office wouldn't give very specific reasons about what issue they had with Terry Proud, but for whatever reason, they did not want her in that office.
Well, and I've stayed out of issues with Department of Veteran Services. My wife used to be the Women Veterans Coordinator there, but let me tell you, in terms of the follow-up, and you point to this, to somehow say I was coerced by the governor's chief of staff that I didn't know what I was doing, sort of thing, or I was drunk when I did it. I mean, it's the same sort of thing. I mean, it's hard, I think, for people to understand that, wait, you were a lieutenant colonel and you were coerced?
But it's also hard for people to understand when someone who is so wild, I mean, we're getting nothing but blowback on this, and veterans groups, columnists, the whole nine, everyone's saying, Governor, let's rethink this one.
Right, yeah, he's very popular in veteran circles, has a very good reputation, and they're very dismayed to see him leaving, which I suspect is part of the reason why he asked for his job back. Mm-hmm. But the governor just this afternoon was asked again about the situation and just said she's said enough. She's done with the issue. So I suspect this might be case closed, and she's indicated that they've already started to move on to find a replacement.
Interesting. All right, let us move on now regarding, it sounds as though Democrats tried to get some amendments regarding gun control, and talk to us about this, because this was somewhat procedural in that you're not hearing any of our bills, So let's just, what, go pile on a bunch of amendments so you're going to have to hear them? What happened here? This is, again, gun control legislation.
It's a procedural maneuver that they try, and they do it all the time, Democrats in the Senate and the House, when they can't get their bills heard in committee for whatever reason. I mean, you had 18 amendments, 1 from Linda Lopez, 17 from Steve Gallardo, and they were all bills of his that he'd pitched that never got a hearing. They were assigned to rules, which is basically the bill graveyard. Whenever Senate President Andy Biggs doesn't want something coming up, send it to rules and you'll never see it again. Except in this case, you attach it as a bill on the floor in an amendment, and that's the hope is you spark debate. You get people talking about it on the floor.
And the other thing that it can do, because procedurally you can ask for a roll call vote on the thing. And so it gets people on record. So if somebody is running against one of these Republicans and you say, wait, you said that it's okay for people to have a magazine that holds 30 bullets, and so it provides some political fodder down the road.
And this is all theoretical, but, I mean, I don't want to use too much of a graphic analysis here, but bang, 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 those things were all shot down. I mean, they weren't even close.
Well, of course, they all went down on party line votes. But as Senator Gallardo said when he, started to talk about his amendments, it's like, look, this guns is what everybody's been talking about this year, and we're not talking about it in Arizona. We're not talking about it in the legislature. And on Monday, because when this happened, only Democrats spoke about this. The only time Republicans spoke up was to make a procedural objection or to call the question and try to shut down the debate. So it's sort of one hand clapping. That's the best shot that Democrats have, short of holding a press conference out on the lawn.
Were there any other? Were any Republicans interested, maybe, in hearing a little about this, or was this basically
not in the slightest?
Not at all, huh?
The only time they would speak up was to say if this amendment is germane or not, have a ruling on whether or not you can even have a discussion about it. Period. And then once we got to the roll call portion of the voting on these amendments, they got through 3 of them before Senator Steve Pearce said, hey, let's just skip all this nonsense and just vote and get done with this, because they don't want to have to continually on 18 amendments, it could have been, take roll call votes on everything like banning semi-automatic weapons, banning high-capacity magazines, making sure that cop killing bullets, making sure that domestic violence offenders can't have guns.
And this is part of what's happening. I think the Democrats are sensing that, maybe not in Arizona, but nationally the mood is changing. The issues of background checks, for example, you can see the mood changing. And the Democrats are hoping to get out in front of it and say to the voters, the Republicans here don't even want to discuss the most basic things. There was also a related issue this week where they didn't want to fund certain mental health services. Again, the other half of the equation, well, if you don't want to control the guns, then let's provide the services to keep the Jared Loughner's from getting the guns. Well, no, we don't want to do that either. And
is this the kind of thing, obviously it's happened before, we see this before, but with an issue like this, do the Democrats do themselves any favors with this?
Well, it gives them something to campaign on.
Yeah.
It gives them a way to further draw a distinction between themselves and any Republican opponents that they may face down the road. And it feeds into the national debate that's happening on guns. But although, as Howie said, the mood's perhaps changing nationally, but not so much here in Arizona.
A couple of decisions here. Federal judges upholding the English immersion program and a ruling in favor of Arizona labor unions. Very quickly, give us kind of an encapsulated version.
The English immersion, this is a lawsuit that goes back to almost before Horizon was on the air. This goes back to 1992. The argument was the federal law says there's an Equal Education Opportunity Act. It says students have to be given an opportunity to learn, which has been interpreted meaning you have to teach them English. Federal judge ruled in 2000 Arizona wasn't living up to its end of the bargain, ordered the state to do something. The state dragged its feet. Another judge came in, levied some fines. Supreme Court said, no, you've got to go back and revisit it and make sure that the state's not doing things. Meanwhile, we now have an English immersion program, 4 hours in class versus some of the other programs. And finally, Rayner Collins said, look, things look okay. Now, you may have other problems. If you're taking kids out of class for 4 hours, they may not be learning geography, they may not be learning science, but that's not the problem of this court anymore, and finally said, enough.
So he said basically the 4 hour, it's valid educational theory. Again, not the best, perhaps, but good enough. Does this end our 20-year odyssey?
I think this ends this one. I talked to attorney Tim Hogan from the Center for Law, and he said, look, I don't think I can get anything else done in this case, But in terms of if there are other issues like kids being denied other education opportunities, maybe we're starting another 20-year odyssey.
And the labor unions deals with what, a couple of laws from 2011, is that true?
Right. One that said, that was basically aimed at the teachers union, that said you can't deduct your dues from your paycheck, or you have to do that. You have to renew that every year. And the federal judge struck it down, saying, "Look, this was targeted at one group. There were lots of exemptions. You left out these deductions. You left out these groups, and it was targeted. And that's you can't do that."
Any impact on current anti-union bills with these?
No.
Because that's public and private.
Well, in fact, they've pretty much given up on a lot of the anti-union bills. In fact, there was one Republican activist who was a founder of the Goldwater Institute who was actually trying to put this on the ballot to amend the Constitution to get around all of these arguments.
Yes. So, how's that going? Do we know?
I think it's very premature. I mean, he's got until next July, or, well, it depends on whether what voters approve, but essentially the next July to get 200,000 signatures.
Ben, from a distance, we hear about these laws, and years later, they go to court. We forget about the bill that was passed and the signature that was there in the governor's office, and they wind up in court. They wind up getting squashed, or something happens. Does that make any, do folks at the legislature, because from a distance we think, what are you doing this for if you know it's going to go to court and it's likely to be pounded down somehow? What do you hear from lawmakers? I mean, does it really make a difference at all?
Lawmakers joke all the time. They'll sit in a rules committee, they'll have an attorney tell them, this is probably unconstitutional and is headed to court. They'll vote it out anyway.
Doesn't really make much of a difference at all.
It doesn't matter to them. In a lot of cases, the statement is worth it, and it's worth millions of dollars in court fees and legal fees, but they'll pass the bill anyway.
Or campaign contributions.
Right, so it's basically a statement,
yeah,
symbolic, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I mean, I think in those cases where they get advice that perhaps it's unconstitutional, I'm sure that makes a few think otherwise, but if the majority's going along with it, you jump in, and it is a way to say, this is what we believe in, this is our statement, we're in here fighting for X or fighting for Y, and an election cycle goes by before you have a court ruling.
Well, yeah, and you wind up forgetting. I mean, years later, these things come down, and people forgot they were passed in the first place.
Understood, and then they say, well, I'll tell you what, we'll tweak the law a little bit. In fact, this law was a version of an earlier law had been tweaked, been struck down, and they keep doing that.
Howie, let's wrap it up here with something right up your alley.
I represent that.
Yeah. The Supreme Court has been petitioned on an interesting marijuana case involving driving.
Yes. It's very clear you cannot drive with certain drugs in your system. Any level is considered unacceptable. This case involves a guy who was stopped. His blood tested positive not for THC, which is active ingredient in marijuana, not for its immediate metabolite, but a secondary metabolite which stays in the body for 30 days. He was charged with drunk driving or driving under the influence. Now, the fascinating part about this case is the state's own witness said there is no evidence that this metabolite causes impairment. Yet the county attorney is trying to get the Supreme Court to say we can still charge them with being impaired, which also means now that the law says certain people can legally smoke marijuana, that if you use medical marijuana at all, you can never drive because every 30 days you can get tested.
But then what does impaired mean? What kind of influence are we talking that you're driving under?
Well, according to Bill Montgomery, it's up to the legislature to decide. If the legislature decides that you're impaired by eating too much chocolate, that's within the prerogative of the legislature.
Is this something the legislature is interested in tackling?
Oh, no. They're going to wait for the Supreme Court to weigh in on this. Now, some states have a specific limit, like we do for alcohol, 0.08. Marijuana, it's like any other drug if you're considered any amount in the system. Now the court is deciding, and this is where you really run down the rabbit hole. Well, when the law says THC or its metabolite, does that mean every potential metabolite, whether it impairs you or not? And this is the kind of thing only a lawyer could love.
I feel like I'm in a science class.
Yes. So do you think Howie did a good job of explaining that?
Yes, Professor.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes,
Ben, it's Ben's first time on the show. He's a child of the 60s, so that's why he let him
He did much better than I could have.
He rambles on about the marijuana. Good to have you here. Good to have you all here.
Well,
thank you so much
sir.
for joining us. Monday on Arizona Horizon, we'll have a debate on the legality of Bisbee's civil union ordinance with Attorney General Tom Horn and the Executive Director of the Arizona ACLU. And legislative minority leaders will discuss issues at the Capitol from the Democrats' perspective. That's Monday evening, 5:30 and 10, right here on Arizona Horizon. Tuesday, we will hear from tax experts on tips for filing and tax frauds to avoid. Wednesday, it's our weekly legislative update with the Arizona Capitol Times. Thursday, we'll look at art projects displayed in conjunction with Sky Harbor's new Sky Train. And Friday, it's another edition of the Journalists Roundtable. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great weekend.
If you have comments about Arizona Horizon, please contact us at one of the addresses on your screen. Your comments may be used on a future edition of Arizona Horizon. Thank you. Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.